Hey everybody, Ben here from DMC Films, and today I'm going to be telling you the story of The Legend of Naval. Now, The Legend of Naval, that's pronounced Naval, not phonetically, which was naval. Generally speaking, I cannot spell and totally did not realize that it's pronounced naval, and I called it Naval for the longest period of time. The Legend of Naval is set in sort of an enchanted, endless forest. The forest pretty much ongoing forever, and so you can just pretty much pick any wooded environment like I've been using over the years. The story of Naval takes place around a young man who doesn't feel that he really has any family or anyone who cares about him, and through the course of a magical adventure he finds out that the family that he thought he never had was actually there watching over him the entire time. Now, this film I never really got to finish, so I'll be showing you a few of the clips that I went through in order to make it, as well as just telling you the rest of the story, because to me, the most important thing is to be able to tell the story, not so much to be able to show it. Basically, I'll be telling you the story that I never got to tell. The title sequence is placed after the first scene, but just for the sake of general introduction as to who's working on the film, that kind of thing. I just want to throw guys a couple of titles up, and just so you guys can see what I was going for with the opening titles, and just to show you what this film is all about. In part of doing The Legend of Naval, one of the most incredible things of working on the project was being able to completely design and build up all costumes and props from scratch. And that's really what I wanted to do with them, pretty much the part of this film. Now, I did finish part of Scene 1, and I'm just going to jump right into that now.
Sweet color. Whoa! Look out!
Hiding behind a first-class wizard? You can't hide from me forever.
Upon the disappearance of the evil sorcerer, Eric rushes over to figure out if this man is alright. The man, who he gets up, refers to Eric as a wizard. Eric obviously is very confused, looks at himself, and realizes his clothes have completely changed to what he was wearing this morning. The wizard calls himself Sir Blake, the roaming knight. Sir Blake asks Eric where he's from. Eric replies, "Oh, I'm from southern Maine," and Sir Blake, obviously not fully understanding, replies back, "Oh, the southern Maine." Granted, Eric doesn't really know where he is or how he got there, and just trying to find a way home. So he agrees to travel with Sir Blake on his travels through the wondrous and endless forest of Naval. Part of Scene 2 I was able to capture, and as what you're seeing now is sort of this training montage of Eric learning to use magic and learning to figure things out. Scene 2 is really Sir Blake explaining what magic is and how to use it and that kind of thing, and teaching Eric about what it means to be a wizard. Sir Blake explains that magic is a mighty force to control, and if you don't pay attention and you don't control it, it will control you. Sir Blake shows Eric a basic magic technique to create a sort of an orb of energy and throw it, much like a baseball.
got it!
After some very frustrating moments, Eric finally figures out exactly what he's doing.
I had trouble at first, so I was just trying to copy you. So I needed to make it my own, and...
Showing Sir Blake the technique that he developed on his own to make the magic not something that he was trying to imitate, but something more his own. Sir Blake is indeed very satisfied with the way Eric has progressed, and then says, "You will one day find your way home." Now, I was able to get most of Scene 3 finished, and just the first part of the scene, which you don't really get to see, is that Sir Blake and Eric are just walking along and discussing exactly what the different wizards are in the different wizard classes. Sir Blake says that they're on their way to see an arc wizard named Fiona. Eric obviously doesn't really know what an arc wizard is, and Sir Blake kind of breaks down the three classes, and working from the bottom up is wizard, wizard master, arc wizard, and sorcerer. Eric learns that the evil wizard that you saw in the beginning of the film is that he let the magic control him too much, and he lost his own control, and he's a slave to the magic, and he's just become this maniacal being. Sir Blake also tells Eric that he's on his way to find a magical kingdom called Mercia, a place that's a legend within the legend. He's looking for this place that most people don't think exists, and which makes everyone else think he's a little bit of a nut.
Now! It's a tree.
You cannot see the golden color.
I see a regular, brown tree.
Perhaps your eyes have not been trained to see past its disguise.
Of being a tree.
Touch it.
Okay.
Are you boys going to buy something from me or just stand there?
Fiona!
Sir Blake, come. Let me have a look at you. You've grown, Sir Blake. More like your father every day. What do we have here? A son, perhaps?
'Tis Sir Eric of the Southern Main, lost and seeking a way home.
Come closer to me, boy. Let me have a good look at you. Ah, yes, a talented young wizard. Even more so than I, perhaps. But there's something different about you. You're not from Naval.
No.
Tell me about your home.
We don't have magic where we come from. I thought it was just in stories.
That must be a terrible place.
We make do.
I see. And how did you come to Naval?
I think it was this rock. See?
This stone. It was made in Mercia. I've only ever seen one other like it. No. Wait! 'Tis the same one!
Are you sure?
Yes, but I don't know how that could be. I gave this to the arch wizard, William.
William? My father's name was William.
Then you must be his son.
Did you know my father? Where is he?
Sir William vanished from Naval a long time ago. He was thought to be dead.
Are you telling me that my father used a stone to travel between worlds?
No, this stone would have only brought him to Naval. There must be another stone. Of course! Here, have you ever seen your father with one of these?
I never knew my father. Wait, I've seen pictures of him with this rock. He always kept it near him.
There's no doubt then. Your father was the arch wizard William, a legend in all Naval.
What kind of legend?
He was the only man to have ever defeated a sorcerer at the master's level, and his blood runs through you.
I told you were a wizard, boy. I am honored to train the kin of legendary blood.
Well, this is all fine and good, but does that mean I can use this crystal to go home?
Unfortunately, a crystal of that type must be charged to use, and the way to charge it has been lost for a long time.
So I'm stuck then?
Perhaps not.
What are you thinking, Fiona?
This boy's blood is legendary. If his father could figure out a way to charge and use the crystal, perhaps he can do the same. What do you think, child?
I'll do whatever it takes to get home, no matter what that means.
You are much like your father, child. Take my crystal with you, and may his spirit guide you on your travels.
We have many moons of work ahead of us, boy. It will take time to refine your skills.
And there's no time to waste. Blake, show me what it means to be a wizard.
Scene 4 begins in a dark room, sort of lit by candles, sort of what was the sorcerer's laboratory, if you will. It's supposed to be a lot of little glass containers, which I never collected enough and obviously never got around to filming either. When you finally hear the sorcerer speak again, he's sort of watching Sir Blake and Eric from a distance, sort of a magic mirror, if you will. And he's basically plotting against the two of them. The main series of Scene 4 is a training montage, sort of the part of Scene 2 that you didn't get to see, you know, the hard work, you know. Magic isn't just, you know, a little playful thing. It's a more serious, it's a discipline, it's a science, it's an art. Sir Blake explains that magic is something you have to find within yourself. It's a control of both your mind and your heart and your body, and it's this sort of universal flow that really helps build a person's character and build a person's sort of mental capacity. Sir Blake explains that magic is not something you create, but something you manipulate. You don't make a ball of magic. You sort of work the energy around you and sort of create this visceral energy, and that's what magic is, at least in this kingdom. Scene 5 takes place at night. Eric and Sir Blake are lying in the grass, side by side, next to a small fire and looking up at the stars. This scene really dives into the heart of the characters, and you learn really the background of each of them, and more or less why they're traveling together, and what makes the two characters friends, sort of in the end. Sir Blake asks Eric to tell him of his home, and Eric says that he doesn't really have a family waiting for him. His dad sort of got up and left when he was a little kid. His mom raised him alone, but she was always working, and she was never really around to take care of him. And he was more or less raised by, you know, distant family members, you know, aunts and uncles, that kind of thing. Eric then sort of asks the question back to Sir Blake. Sir Blake tells him that he was raised by his father, sort of a reverse of Eric's being raised by his mother. Sir Blake was raised by his father. His mother, he said, passed away when he was very young, and he never really knew him, much like Eric didn't know his own father. Eric thinks, you know, man, this must have been really hard on you. Sir Blake kind of looks at him and references back in Scene 3 where Eric says, oh, we managed without magic. So Sir Blake says, well, we've managed, you know, without a mother. Eric asks then, you know, he's like, do you see your dad at all? And Sir Blake just kind of vaguely answers, well, we cross paths from time to time. There's sort of a pause, there's a silence, they're just kind of sitting back and thinking. And Eric says, well, what would you think about me staying here in Naval? And Sir Blake's confused, he's like, well, don't you want to return home? And Eric says, well, you know, there's nothing for me at home. Like, here I can be a wizard, here I can, you know, I have some sort of purpose. And Sir Blake says, well, yeah, but, you know, magic has a downside, you know. You can become this sort of evil sorcerer, you know, if you don't. It's a dangerous path to walk, and it's not all, you know, fun and games. It's not sort of this happy-go-lucky kind of moment. Blake tells Eric that the wizard he was fighting, the evil sorcerer, is one that his heart kind of got lost to greed, and he kind of took shortcuts in learning magic, and granted, he got the power, but he lost his mind in the process. Scene 6 is really the turning point in the film, where the conflict really kind of jumps in. It starts out pretty lighthearted. It's similar to the previous scene. It's night. It's sort of this camp scene. There's a fire going. They're sort of munching along and working on their own things. Eric takes a bite of what I used in the film would be grape nuts, and he just bites them and goes, "Oh, what are these? They're hard as rocks." Sort of my own little commentary on the cereal. But Blake referred to them as Bicaro nuts, which are sort of this high energy, this hunter-gatherer kind of scouring up food that young wizards eat, as he explains, to sort of gain energy. And then Eric takes a sip of what would be his homemade tea, and pretty much almost chokes on how terrible it is. And there's an exchange back and forth where Sir Blake kind of looks up at him in confusion. Eric just kind of gives him a thumbs up, and he's like, "Eh," and like spits it out on the side. Eric looks to see that Sir Blake is working on a map of sorts, and the map was a piece of canvas that I kind of charred the edges of and made it look really kind of worn out, that he would be able to carry around with him. And they look at the map together, and Sir Blake points out that they're in a place called the Lakota Highlands. And he was talking about how his father was looking for Mercia as well, sort of that mythical kingdom. And he said it was 25 days beyond sort of this area of hills. Eric points out a small area marked in red, and Blake says, "Oh, that's the Grove of the Sorcerers," sort of the area where this dark magic kind of gathers, and the sorcerers kind of tend to kind of gather around together. That's where the dark magic originated, and they kind of just gravitate towards that region. Eric then was sort of looking off into space, sort of daydreaming, and just kind of thinking about his dad, thinking about his father, and how he never really knew him. Eric then asks Sir Blake if he ever met his father in his journeys in Naval, and Blake responds that he actually did at some point. He crossed paths, I think, once or twice with him. And so Eric, what was he like? Did you get to talk to him? And Blake says, well, he was, I was very young at the time, but he was a kind and gentle man, and he mentions that he's a sorcerer, and Eric kind of like jumps back. He's like, well, wait a minute, aren't all the sorcerers sort of this evil, maniacal creature? And Sir Blake kind of gives this weird, a little bit confusing explanation that a sorcerer, if you learn to control it, if you learn to control the dark magic, that you kind of take on more of the role of a wizard master, but you have sort of the level in the eyes of everyone else as an arch wizard. So you're kind of cutting across all classes of wizard, and it's really a sort of a special honor. Eric thinks, well, you're a wizard master, Sir Blake. Will you ever reach this higher level? And he says, yeah, maybe. And as they're sort of going back and forth in this polite conversation, the sorcerer kind of swoops in from the time and grabs the crystal from Eric, who Eric just realized that as he was thinking of his father, the crystal kind of got charged. It came to life, and the sorcerer just then snatches it away. Gets up, just like, give that back. The sorcerer just like, oh, come and get it. And he vanishes, and Eric wants to go after him, and so Blake stops, like, no, we'll get him in the morning, we won't go now. And Eric's obviously very angry at him. It's like his only way home. But, Sir Blake calms him down, like, just go to bed, we'll take care of it in the morning. And for that part of the scene, it just sort of fades out. And we're left with sort of this conflict that we don't know what to do with. Early the next morning, Sir Blake awakens to find that Eric is gone. He's missing. He gets up and he's like, oh, awaken, whatever. And he kind of goes and does his morning business and comes back and uh-oh, he's gone. He took the map, he took, his stuff, and he's gone. He already went to confront the sorcerer. Obviously, Sir Blake, very distraught over this. He's worried that, he's going to lose him, that he's going to get killed by the sorcerer. And just as he's running off to catch him, he kind of looks back, kind of stops, and he says to himself, Father, don't let me be late once more. And you kind of get this idea that maybe he lost another apprentice at some point. And it's sort of this little bit of a subconscious thing. You may not recognize it right away, but you're like, oh, geez, maybe this happened before. At the start of the climax, Eric's just sort of walking cautiously through this grove of the sorcerers. It's very dark, very kind of cold colors in the scene. Eric then is confronted by the sorcerer, who calls him either very brave or very stupid to kind of walk into this scenario. And Eric, obviously kind of taunting the sorcerer, is very confident in his newfound skills. But he's obviously way too confident to confront the sorcerer. Eric then kind of turns and makes his little disc of magic and tosses it at the sorcerer, who the sorcerer obviously sees through his little ruse, catches it, dispels it, and then lunges forward at him. The sorcerer then grabs him, disappears, reappears, and pins him up against a tree while holding his neck. He's choking him to death. Eric just struggling to breathe, and the sorcerer's just like, this is the end for you, this is it. The sorcerer looks at him and says, "It's sad, isn't it, how easily a life can be taken?" It's sort of this mockery of him. Just then, at that point, you see sort of kind of like jumps, and what happened is that Sir Blake stabs the sorcerer with his sword. Obviously, doesn't do much damage to the sorcerer. He's always, pretty prepared. He doesn't really faze him that much, but it's enough to catch him off guard. Sir Blake obviously very confident because he knows that he is on the side of good. He can win. He says, "It's true. I am your opponent. Leave the boy be." And then it goes into this obviously very intense fight scene, which again, one of those things you just sort of envision. You never really get to film sort of this back and forth banter, and they're very evenly matched and kind of back and forth, and it seems like the sorcerer's going to win, seems like Sir Blake's going to win. Never really sure. The sorcerer, sort of at the very end here, refers to Sir Blake as his master. He says, "You cannot defeat me, master." Sir Blake reveals that the sorcerer was once his student, and he lost him to this dark magic. Realizes that the sorcerer reminds then Sir Blake that only another sorcerer could take another sorcerer's life. It's sort of the barrier that you think, okay, he just can't win, he just can't beat him. Sir Blake then reveals his true class of wizard, and that is a guardian. It's a special 5th class that nobody really talks about, and that class allows him to protect Eric and allows him to defeat the sorcerer. Sir Blake then takes a lesson from Eric and makes the magic his own, which is sort of the tagline of the film itself. It's like, you need to make the magic your own. You need to develop it in your own way, which in a way is a very artistic principle, is having your own style, having your own way to go. Blake then kind of charges and creates a empowered sword that he's been using. Not quite to the level of like a lightsaber, but sort of an energized particle effect, if you will. Sir Blake then goes, the sorcerer throws his final attack. Sir Blake then darts forward, dodges or deflects any attack that the sorcerer throws at him, and slices off the sorcerer's head. The effect was going to be that it was sort of distant. You don't actually see the cutting off of the head, but what you do see is a smoking, steaming sort of skull spinning on the ground as the sorcerer's beheaded, and you just see his body kind of fall to the ground. And he does this pretty much right in front of Eric. Eric is just freaking out at this point. His friend just completely destroyed the sorcerer, and he's like, okay, maybe you're not the good guy after all. Well, Eric doesn't really know what to ask him. He doesn't, like, who really are you? And when he works up the courage to ask him anything, he says, "What is a guardian?" Sir Blake then reveals that a guardian is this, again, special 5th class, and he received this class by Eric's father. And that leads into a pretty quick explanation of what's been going on. So what we find out at this point is that Sir Blake has actually been to Mercia, and it's not quite the magical kingdom that he thought it was. Instead, it's a city where magic is banned. It's where sorcerers and wizards of all kind are imprisoned, and Eric's father is imprisoned in the city. Sir Blake made it to the city, met up with Eric's father, and Eric's father says, "Go find my son and protect him." Sir Blake then sends this little transport stone to Eric's world. So what we find out is that Sir Blake is behind Eric's coming to Naval in the first place. He sent for him. He was there protecting him the entire time, and everything he said about just sort of finding out about Eric, he more or less knew all along, and he was just kind of pretending. Sir Blake realizes he couldn't have defeated the sorcerer without Eric's sort of knowledge of needing to make the magic your own, and he then knights Sir Eric as a wizard master, and they exit and continue on their journey away from this evil and dark place. Now the final scene, some of what I mentioned earlier in the end of the fight scene is actually mentioned here in this scene, not in the other one. I wasn't entirely sure, I was just kind of going through the script here. Eric realizes, again, his father's alive, and he says, well, I don't want to go home now, I want to go find my dad, and travel to Mercia with you. The scene opens up with Sir Blake and Eric standing over a gravestone, or a grave marker in this case, and Eric says, I understand now, this is what you meant by seeing your father and crossing paths with him from time to time. It's sort of the untold story, you just kind of have to suspect it on your own, that Blake's father died, obviously, a long time ago. I don't know if I mentioned it, or if it's even here, I don't know if it's something I wrote in or wrote out. It was the concept that Sir Blake's father perhaps was killed by the sorcerer, and Sir Blake kind of struggles with, I don't want to take revenge on the sorcerer, but I have to, I have to move on. Sir Blake at this point reveals that he has the travel stones, the ones to take him to Eric's world and back to Naval, and he had them the entire time. And Sir Blake kind of playfully says, oh, I thought you didn't want to go home at this point. And Eric says, no, I want to go, I want to find my father, I want to travel with you now. The film then ends on an upward panning shot, which is, I know, a little cliched, but a lot of things in this film are. And they agree to travel together and to continue their journey. And you're left with a very pleasant and hopeful scene as the two continue to journey together. Now, if you stuck around even after the credits to just see pretty much everything, there's again one of those little bonus scenes that you see in movies nowadays, and a couple of my films I've done it too. And that is when the two of them are just, again, sort of walking along, and all of a sudden you hear this really powerful, sort of a roar. Eric obviously stops, he just staggers, and Sir Blake stops because Eric stops. Eric, again, fearful, because what is that? Sir Blake, very calm, very collected, doesn't even really faze him at all. He just says, "Dragon, keep close, boy," and continues walking on. Eric just kind of looks up and smiles and shakes his head and just goes, "I love this place." Then it fades out, and that is really the end of the film.